It's something that I have thought a lot about. And if I were to ever get married, I definitely feel that I would want to absolutely have a prenup. Okay, welcome back to Third Time's Me. It is August 2nd, 2022, but y'all will be listening to this episode on August 3rd, 2022. I cannot believe it's already August, by the way.
Dude, that's
Do you feel like the
insane.
year is just flown by?
It's insane.
I know, I feel like we always say this, but I feel, especially like this year has just really flown by.
Yeah, I definitely feel like it's not even about getting older. It's about kind of the craziness that's been going on in the world for the last 2 years. It makes every year go faster. It really is.
Mm-hmm. It's like we're trying to make up for our lost 2 years of pandemic years, and it's just going by super quick. We're trying to cram too many things in.
Yeah, actually, yeah, that's pretty insightful. That is probably a lot of it, because for 2 years everybody was on lockdown or was afraid to go anywhere, and once everything got lifted, they're trying to catch up.
Mm-hmm.
So that makes sense. But I'm sure there's also a factor of social media, the internet, just everybody having access to so much information, whether it's right or wrong, that also speeds up time.
Agreed.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, so today we are going to be talking about the idea of prenups and maybe also chatting about like wanting to have kids, wanting to not have kids. I would like to get a male's perspective on this. My dad's had a few relationships.
And I've had one kid.
Yes. Hopefully just one. Are there any others that I don't know about?
Wow.
So this topic actually came to me, or this idea about to talk about this and kind of like think more on it came to me through a friend of mine who shared with me earlier this year that her and her now husband had a prenup before they got married. And in my mind, prenups were only for the super wealthy or famous is kind of where my mind went with it, because you don't commonly hear about people, or at least I don't. I've never heard about like just kind of your average Joe people getting prenups. It feels more of like a super wealthy thing, or if you're a trust fund baby,
Right.
or if you're a celebrity, all these things. So to have someone that I know really well, who, I mean, definitely both individuals are, successful individually and will be or are together as a couple. But it's not like they're multimillionaires, to my knowledge.
I mean, but they're doing okay.
Yeah, they're doing good.
Yeah.
But it was just kind of interesting to talk about that. So, it's something that I have thought a lot about. And if I were to ever get married, I definitely feel that I would want to absolutely have a prenup. And I know it's not the most romantic thing or the sexiest thing. It kind of, I think why a lot of people maybe don't do prenups or are turned off by them is because it feels like you're implying that your relationship has a chance to end.
Is going to end.
And that you're protecting yourself from that risk. And that's obviously not romantic to think about going into a marriage. I understand that. But at the end of the day, there's a lot of just being reasonable, being logical about, none of us go into a marriage, or I mean, no one I know goes into a marriage with intentions of, I'm going to get divorced. This is not going to last for very long.
Well, right. You wouldn't get married if that's where you were going into it. Right.
But just being realistic. And then I also think from what my friends have shared that went through this process, there's a lot of things outside of just individual assets and maybe wealth that you had going into the marriage that you discussed. There's a lot of things that come out of this that are really helpful in terms of kind of like a premarital counseling type of material that you work through together.
Yeah, and actually that just that made me think of something. Obviously, through all the years of therapy I've been through, and you know the answer to this. What's like the number one thing that married couples fight about?
Money,
Yeah,
finances.
finances.
Yeah.
Yes. So doesn't it, if you're thinking about it impartially and logically, doesn't it make sense that you would want to address these issues before you get married?
Get ahead of it.
It's the same reason, whether even if you're like, say you're religious, and you get married in a church, the pastor or the minister usually goes through at least a couple of premarital counseling sessions to talk about things like
how you want to raise your kids.
Yeah, all that stuff.
Money,
so
budgeting.
why shouldn't all these other issues? You're doing the same thing,
right?
When you sign a prenup, it's kind of a method to make sure you address these issues before you get married to make sure it's going to work out. You are trying to avoid problems later.
For sure. And I think
it's not a bad thing.
I agree. And I think that the reason I also feel so passionately about this is especially as a woman, because traditionally, if we look at the history of marriage, men and women got married for exchange of property and land and livestock and all those things if we go way back to the day. Did you know that? So way back when, that's actually the history of why women brides traditionally wear veils. Obviously, this is not the case for now. It's more of just a fashion statement. But the veil was worn to hide the appearance
because if the groom
saw the bride.
Right. So if the groom on the day of the wedding decided
wasn't attracted, wasn't into it,
then her family was going to lose all that.
Yeah, because there was an exchange. So
that's right.
So
I have heard of that.
Yeah. So that was
God,
yeah. So I learned this, I think, and it was one of my.
Can I curse on your podcast? That's so fucked up.
But this was back in the day when, women were more like property, and it wasn't. This was before.
Now I'm getting pissed. Stop referring to women as property. But I know that's the history of the world.
Right.
I know, and it's fucked up.
Right.
Jesus
so
Christ.
Women were. Marriage arrangements were agreed upon for, an exchange of, okay, if you marry my daughter, I'm going to, give you X amount of acres of my land or these many like livestock, whatever. Like there was, it was an arrangement. It was like a contractual arrangement.
We're 10 minutes in and you're pissing me off already. But it's only because
I'm just sharing facts.
I know I'm kidding, but God, that is so irritating.
So my point in sharing that is I think it's especially important for more women of all backgrounds, all income levels. It doesn't matter.
Just more women of means, not even women of means, just any woman.
Just to protect yourself.
Yes.
Protect yourself.
Who knows if you are going to marry some guy when he's trying to be in a band and then all of a sudden you become the CEO of some startup company and you become a millionaire.
Right. And then if you find yourself supporting your husband who's decided to...
That's where I was going with this.
So then you decide to support your husband. You are the breadwinner.
While he wants to become a DJ.
Right. This is a hypothetical situation.
Yes.
Then,
that never happened.
Something ends up happening. You guys fall out of love, have problems. You're getting a divorce. He is entitled... Obviously, it depends on what state you live in. I know that every state's a little bit different with how divorces are handled. But he could be, just because of the joint asset situation, he could be entitled to taking half of your income or half of your savings, half of your 401k, all these things when maybe you were supporting him, which he
did not contribute to.
Correct. Which it's more just about agreeing upon things in the beginning and making sure that what maybe I think is fair and divided in a fair way is maybe not what this couple over here thinks, and that's fine. But it's more just about like agreeing to this in the beginning. Right. And then you guys are both protected. And then it also removes the emotions that come naturally with, breaking up. Like you're not going to always be in the right headspace. So, but to go back to the point of, I just think it's really, 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 really important for women because of the history of marriage and what it, obviously we've come a long way. I just think it's extra important to protect yourself financially, your well-being. There's also, you can have discussions in these types of conversations with prenup, with the attorneys and all the folks that you work with on this to make this a legal thing agreed on. If you guys ever to have kids and if you were to split up, how is the co-parenting financials going to work? How, like, making sure that, you know, if you decide you both want to 50-50 contribute to co-parenting, whether it's like the cost of college, like school, braces, whatever, just making sure that all of those things are sorted. They cover everything from your finances going into the marriage to how you're going to split, to if you have your own business, making sure that you protect your business as your individual like property and success and assets, to kids, to maybe pre-existing debts that you had going into the marriage. Maybe you have like, you know, whatever. Maybe you're an attorney and you have $300,000 of like law school debt and, you know, those types of things. Like, you don't want to maybe take on that debt because it's your partner's from a previous life. Like,
right.
All these things.
And
so,
also this can be, this can be applicable to, it could be two men being married, two women being married. I mean, it doesn't matter. The gender roles is irrelevant, but you were talking about historically, you know, it's kind of a man's world. It has been, which is not a good thing, but you can also apply this to the modern day times where whether it's, you know, two men that get married or two women that get married, the prenup can still be a good thing. And it avoids a lot of the stress and problems and conflict that can happen if you decide that it's not working out and you want to go your separate ways. Then it turns into a mess. And the only people that make money on that are the attorneys. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately. Mm-hmm. So if you do the prenup thing and you guys talk about this before you get married, number one, it's going to be a good way to realize either we should or shouldn't get married. So it can be a wake-up call for that. Mm-hmm. But it can also be a good way of avoiding a lot of stress if the marriage doesn't work out. Mm-hmm. You know, and that's not a judgment, because you know what? So many people get married with good intentions. You meet somebody, you fall in love with them, and I don't think anybody at the altar plans on getting divorced when they say those vows.
No.
I mean, there might be a few psychopaths, but for the most part, nobody is planning to get divorced when they walk down the aisle.
You're in love.
So stuff happens. You change as a person. Maybe you got married too young and you developed into a different person, and then you're just not compatible anymore. I mean, that's fine. Mm-hmm. But I think the idea of the prenup is not just about the money. It's about agreeing on how you guys want to live the rest of your lives together, and to see if you're compatible. Mm-hmm. And it can bring up a lot of issues. Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think also, like, from what my friends have shared with me, that they went a lot of the discussions that you have several meetings. It takes a long time to go through all the different categories of things that you need to discuss and share and be open about your financial status, any debts you have. Like, you're putting everything on the table for your future partner to be seen, and you're talking about this in a very open space.
Which that should be healthy, right?
Right. I think, my past relationships, specifically the two that I was engaged to, just because like those would have been the times that it would have happened. Both, one individual in particular was very financially, shall I say, risky? What's the word? I don't want to say unstable, but yeah, what's the word?
Unstable.
One person that I was with was
engaged to?
Yeah, the most recent.
Was unstable? Oh, well.
I wouldn't say unstable. He made good money, but he was also very irresponsible with his spending.
Oh, okay. That makes sense. Yeah. That's not what I thought you meant. Okay.
No, so like going into, I remember when we started the wedding planning process, and had like a budget tracker. We kind of knew how much, I was starting to collect quotes from the different vendors, the venue, the caterer, the flowers, all these things. Right. And tallying up, we had agreed on, because we were going to be paying for a majority of the wedding, just because we were, these are the times
because your parents aren't rich. I know. I'm kidding. It's a joke.
But we were both old enough and making comfortable incomes where we wanted to just we wanted it to be something that we did ourselves, and that was great. I just remember, though, very quickly, like we just going back to like finances are the number one cause of divorce. It was a really insightful exercise to be going through that with him, And then also at one point, I don't know if I told you, I hired a financial advisor for
You
us
did.
in
Yeah.
San Francisco.
Yeah.
With the intention of going into getting married, planning a wedding. I was feeling overwhelmed with, we live in the most expensive city in the country.
One
We
of
have
them. I
a
mean,
pretty high maintenance lifestyle with just all of the social things that we did. I had an idea of how much I was comfortable spending on a wedding, kind of a general ballpark. And after getting quotes and kind of seeing things add up, I was quickly realizing this is going to be like way over what I was comfortable with in terms of overall budget for the wedding.
right.
So there was just all these things happening. COVID was hitting. You know, I was a little bit concerned about one of us maybe potentially losing our job, just given the state of the world.
Yeah.
So I found a financial advisor for us because I just wanted to, thought it was a good exercise to do before getting married, to just make sure that we were on the same page with kind of how to budget and how to be responsible for one another, and like what things that would be joint savings and what things we would do individually and whatever. And then also planning for the wedding. And I remember going into one of our appointments with her finance guy, and he was just like, okay, you guys need to either postpone the wedding. He's like, if you want to pay all cash for this, like, you need to give yourselves more time to save, because I didn't want to put stuff on credit cards for this wedding. I just wanted to save up. And the timeline for us wanting to get married and how expensive this wedding was going to become, and then a lot of other things that was going on, it was just going to be really hard to do, and like the smart way that I wanted to do it. Right. And so that was really insightful to go through that exercise and just kind of see that he and I were not on the same page. I'm by no means I'm not the most responsible with money. I can't sit here and be like, I am perfect with budgeting and all that, but I definitely feel I was a little bit more grounded and a little bit more realistic about what was achievable, and like not needing to always have the most expensive cars and the most expensive things and like all that kind of stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, and then getting the house together in Austin.
That was expensive.
Like that. And so all that stuff was going on.
God.
So that was another thing I forgot to add into it. It was the wedding. It was the house. We also, with the pandemic hitting, we typically had renters in the house, but there weren't travelers, so there was no one offsetting the mortgage of the house. So there was just a lot of things going on. So anyway, long story long, I just think it's good to talk about those things. And the person I'm seeing right now, I recently brought this up in discussion, and we didn't go into details, but I just kind of was sharing with him like my approach to money and like kind of my mindset on it, and what I feel is healthy, and some triggers that I have from unhealthy things in the past, and just kind of had an open conversation with each other. And we're very much on the same page with financial goals and kind of where we see ourselves wanting to be in the next 3, 5, 10 years. So I just think it's better to have some of those conversations earlier on, especially before you get married.
And so that's some of the benefit that talking about a prenup and even doing one, it brings these issues to light before you get married.
Yeah.
It gives you things to think about. Again, it's like a counseling session.
Like premarital counseling.
Yes, that's literally what it is.
But for finances.
Well, but again, it's not just about finances. It can be about...
there's a connection to So even if you're talking about the kids stuff, it's still all like financially driven, but it's
Yeah, but the kids thing is not just financial. It's
you talk about, though, how you will divide up those costs. If you are to, what you agree on for who's going to pay for college, how would we split that up? Like, are we paying for that? Are we making our kids pay for that? Are we supporting them? At what point do we plan to not contribute to their college if they decide to go on to be a doctor? Like, are we paying for that too? Like, kind of discussing all those things.
So where does so we talked about this before, but if you meet somebody and you want to get married, and you both agree that, we either don't want to have kids, or we want to have one, or we want to have two, and then 5 years into it, you've had one kid, and then all of a sudden one of you wants to have 5 more. Is that an issue that can be addressed in the prenup? Or
see, that's why I don't know for sure, because I haven't done it, but that's why I was saying it is financially driven. I don't think the prenup talks about, like, I don't know for sure, but I don't think you're talking about like how many kids are we going to have. It's more like the financial contribution and responsibilities that come with it.
You can expand that too. You can say, I'm okay living in the Northwest. I'm okay living in Mexico, but I will not live in Boston, for instance. Can you put that in a prenup? How specific can you get?
But that's not something that you would be taking away from someone if you divorced. Do you understand? So, my understanding, the prenup is more about if you are to divorce and split or separate, what would be, who would get what,
Right.
and how your
Yeah.
assets are protected, and how you would divide,
Yeah.
maybe
I guess
combine costs.
I guess I'm looking at it more as marriage therapy than.
Yeah, that's all like
Yeah. Yeah.
premarital
You're right.
therapy,
You're right.
though.
That wouldn't be handled in a prenup. Yeah.
But those are all
Okay.
things I think you should definitely talk about in premarital.
Well, that's counseling.
Yeah.
That's not a prenup.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Open the podcast.
And on the note of kids, I'm curious to know, since you've been married, you are married now on your third.
Yeah, I've been married several
relationship.
times.
Sorry, I'm not supposed to call that out.
That's fine. I'm
I'm
kidding.
giving context to
I'm
listeners
totally kidding. Knock it off.
to prove that you have life experience.
Yeah, it took me 3 times to find my
Okay.
Riley, whatever. Mommy's not
Do
giving me attention.
you?
I found my miracle finally on the 3rd time.
So you
Thank goodness.
had me when you were 19. I was totally not planned, guys.
Oh, we totally planned for
Ew.
you. Me and your mom met freshman year of college, went to a Scorpions concert, and decided to have a kid.
My question is from a male perspective. I mean, everyone's different. Did you think you wanted kids before you had a kid?
No.
And I'm not going to be offended.
I know.
Be as open as possible.
Obviously, I was 19 years old. I was 8.
You were still a kid yourself.
I was 18 when I met your mom. So yeah, it's not. No, I had no desire at that age to have a kid. I didn't.
Did you think you'd want a kid maybe later on in life?
Nope.
Okay, that's what I
No.
was getting at.
Yeah.
So no.
No. And a lot of that might have to do with my upbringing, and my parents were divorced and stuff
Yeah.
I went through. But no, I didn't. And it sounds like a line in a movie. No, I didn't know that I wanted a kid until I had you, obviously. But no, before I found out that I was going to be a father, I never wanted to be a father. God, that's heavy. I don't even like the way that sounds. And it's because I can hear myself in the headphones. Because
Aw.
I'm saying it to my daughter. That's why.
Dad, I said no offense taken.
That's why it's heavy.
You're not saying I regret having you.
No, God no.
Okay,
No, but still,
then
it just
I asked the
sounds
question.
weird to say it out loud.
It's okay.
And we are always completely honest with each other, so that's why I had to say it. But yeah. But there was, and I have told you the story before. I remember exactly when your mom told me that she was pregnant. My first response was, okay, we're doing this. We're going to make this work. So.
And your second wife, you mentioned we were talking earlier.
Yes. We got married. I already obviously had you. And there was.
Was I like 5, I think, when you guys got married? Or 6?
Well, it would have been 90. You were born in 92. We got married in 98. So yeah,
Okay,
you
so
were
6.
6 years old. Yeah. Yeah. I think I went into that marriage talking about like, I'm not sure if I want to have another kid. I never said no.
Hard no. You weren't a hard no.
I wasn't
You
a
were
hard
just not
no,
sure
but I
if you
just
did.
wasn't sure.
And she
She definitely wanted to have kids.
And she expressed that she definitely
I
wanted
don't
more
remember if
kids.
she actually said, look, if you can't give me a solid yes, we're having kids, then I'm not going to marry you. I don't think she ever said that. And there were other issues I'm not going to talk about that didn't come up. That were never a hard no. It wasn't like she gave me the ultimatum of, you better tell me you want to have kids or I'm not marrying you.
Mm-hmm.
That never happened. We were both young in our.
Yeah.
She was
So
younger
you were
than
like,
I was.
you were like, I don't think I do, but it's not a hard no.
But I was
She
only 24 years old. I'm like, I think it's. I can't say that I'll never want to have another kid at 24 years old.
Right.
I mean, that seems stupid. I don't know.
For sure. And I've been there. And then
Yeah.
she sounds like she communicated that she like most likely like wanted kids, but there wasn't a sit down heart to heart conversation about like, listen, dude, like for sure want kids,
Right.
and I just want to make sure we are on the same page before we walk down the aisle.
Right.
Because if you decide 5 years from now you are still don't want kids and don't ever want kids, then I'm not going to be happy.
Right. No, we never had that conversation.
So then did this come up later in the marriage?
No, that's not why we got divorced.
Oh, okay.
No.
Okay.
No.
And then, I mean, your wife now obviously has kids from her previous marriage, and so you guys,
Yeah. So we're
You
actually
guys-
that was perfect.
grown kids,
Yes.
never want there was never a thing, right?
Oh.
To have kids together.
Oh no.
Oh, I didn't want to
No.
assume, but I feel like I feel
No.
like you would have mentioned that.
She had the 3 she wanted, and by the time we met, she was, I think. So we met.
You guys
I
are in your
was-
40s, or you're
well,
both
no,
40.
I was 39, I think, when we met. She was about my age. I'm not going to say it on air. But yeah, we were both done with kids by the time we met. We'd already been married. She obviously had to actually raise the kids, unlike, where I was kind of.
Well, they were married for.
They were married for 20 years. So
Yeah.
yeah, she did that whole thing, but she didn't want any more kids. That was never an issue.
Okay.
Ever. So yeah, I don't know how to relate that to the whole prenup thing.
Well, I wasn't gonna
Can
go back
that-
to the prenup thing.
Okay.
I was gonna segue into this being the conversation about the kid thing, because I just was curious from a male perspective, given that I come from, everyone in my family's been divorced at least once. All my grandparents have been divorced. All my parents have been divorced.
God, I guess that's true, isn't
Well,
it?
sorry. Okay, well, my sister and her husband are the only married couple in the family, and they just got married a couple years ago. They're not going to get divorced. They're happily married and in love.
Everything's
But like
great.
they're like still kind of the younger generation. So we're talking about like the older generations of the family. Everyone's got divorced at least once.
Yeah, which is so funny because now that you bring that up, Pam's family, for the most part, I'm sure there's a few exceptions, but for the most part, whether it's her parents, grandparents, cousins, uncles, aunts, not a lot of divorce. Yeah, definitely a different dynamic.
And I can't help but wonder if that's had a big impact on. I mean, I know I don't want to like speak too much about her relationship past because she's not here to speak for herself, but I wonder if that had a lot to do with how her and her ex-husband were able to come together and really prioritize like strong co-parenting even when they split, and having such a healthy blended family dynamic that you guys have now. And like I've been
Yeah.
and I told her this when we were at the concert in Seattle a few weeks ago, that I just have so much respect, and like I'm really impressed with I'm sure it wasn't always easy, but they just we all get together for holidays, and it's her ex-husband with his new wife, and you are there, and you guys are married now, and I've never sensed discomfort. And I'm sure there's little moments where it's kind of like bicker, but it's like any other family.
Yeah.
It still feels like you can all be in the same room together, and you guys respect each other, and there's the common love for the children that they had together, and they're not going to let the fact that they decided to split cause problems for their kids and
Yeah.
divide things and make holidays. Like her and I talked about this in Seattle, like holidays have been such a thing
Since I've been
for
with her.
anyone that's been, well, no, I was going to say for anyone that's come from split families like me. And then I imagine maybe this is what your experience was too, where the parents don't come together to create one holiday. Every time I've had holidays, it's rotating through, do I come spend Christmas and Thanksgiving with you and Pam and then your guys' family? Do I spend it with mom and dad Jim? Do I go spend it with maybe my partner at the time's family? There's like 3 different sets of parents to try to
and you have
rotate through.
And you're trying to bounce around, like you're trying to plan your day. Can I hit 2 houses on one day? And you're like,
Right.
Gee, or they're in different states, and I have to pick, the 20th of December, and I'll see you, and then on the 25th, I'll
Mhm.
see you, and on New Year's Eve, I'll
Yeah.
see somebody else.
So I just really respect anyone that if I were to ever get married and then ever split, or ever have kids with someone and then split, I would absolutely make it a priority to make it work to come together and have joint holidays, so that it's not burdening my kids, if I were to have kids, to have to split their time between all these, because it's just such a fucking pain in the ass.
Yeah.
And it's
And it puts the burden on the kids.
absolutely.
Yes.
Do you know how much flying around I've done? And
I know I did it I didn't
Yeah.
fly, but I did a lot of driving
Yeah.
around when I was a kid. I
Pick
know.
up, drop off,
Yes.
switching the day after Christmas, the day before Thanksgiving, trying to
Yeah.
see everyone on like one holiday weekend, and then feeling bad when one of your parents, like, you just, for your own fucking sanity as a kid, you just really want to just go to one house and be there for that weekend because that's the only time off from work or from school
And
you
just,
have.
just be able to see
And then
everybody.
feeling bad though that you can't maybe see the other family.
Yeah.
So all of that.
No, that is a definite difference. I definitely believe that Pam came and Jason came from a different upbringing where there was a lot more focus on family and
is the unit.
as a unit.
Mhm.
Exactly. Yes.
For sure.
Definitely than I had.
But that's interesting that I'm gonna have to deep dive into this because it's, maybe you don't want to go into that, but based off of your upbringing, your kind of initial thoughts of not thinking you wanted kids or cared to have kids, and then because I feel that has some to do with why I don't know if I want kids, just from my own experiences and being nervous to. Well, there's a couple reasons. I mean, for one, it's I don't take being a parent lightly. I think I just want, if I'm going to be a mom, I want to be like a really fucking great mom. And not that I don't think I would be, but I also think my expectations and standards are really high that I put on myself to like what kind of parent. Yeah. And there's like so many things I'd want to be able to do and provide for my kids. And I think there's like this bar that I've set for myself where I'm like, I just don't know. There's also a lot of things I still want to do with my own life that it wouldn't be impossible to do with kids, but it would definitely be a lot trickier or harder. It's not as convenient. And I just kind of really enjoy that. The freedom to be able to pick up and do things.
That makes a lot of sense. I was just going to say, because I deal with this in therapy all the time. The way we are as adults is really influenced by what you went through as a kid. But yes, the environment that I'm not blaming anybody, because I was always loved by both my parents and by my family, but there was a lot of instability and divorce and all that stuff. So I am sure my perception of marriage and kids and relationships was shaped by that.
Mm-hmm.
It had to be, right? And then you kind of went through the same thing, so I'm sure that influences you
for sure
on your whole idea of do I want to do this?
Mm-hmm.
Do I want to get married? Do I want to have kids? And I hate to use the word tainted, but my parents, after it was all done, they were friends for most of the rest of
adult life,
Granny's life, adult life. But there was a rough 10 or 15, not 15, 10 years where
there was tension. Maybe
that had to. There was more than tension. But that had to affect my impression of what it was like to be married and have kids. And I'm sure that might have turned me off on the whole concept of getting married and having kids, because I'm like, God, this is what I went through. I don't want to put another human being through that.
Yeah.
But if I had the upbringing that like Pam had or Jason had,
might have had different.
I might have been like,
thoughts.
oh my God, this would be great to have kids and raise a family.
For sure.
Yeah, I didn't have the best. And again, it's not an indictment of them. It is what it is. But I'm sure that shaped my opinions on it. And it probably shaped yours for what you went through.
And I think, the thing that I constantly strive for to like bring to every recording that I do for this show is to just be vulnerable and raw and honest. So
and
it's not
try not to cry.
And it's it's not. Can we have some more comedic relief, please?
I can do that. I always have something.
So
on my back pocket,
it's not saying that any of my parents weren't wonderful, and everyone does the best they can with the experience they have and learn from their parents and all that. But, growing up with split parents, divided parents, being raised by a step parent, having those different dynamics and kind of walking on eggshells as a kid, trying to manage the relationship and the energies of all of your parents involved and the dynamics there and any tensions that exist there. You have to really learn to be very emotionally in tune and aware of your adult figures and your parentals in your life at a very young age. And so you develop very quickly in that way.
Yeah.
And I think that actually in a positive manner, I think that's why I'm really good at reading people and like in tune with people's energies, because I had to do that. I was kind of a situation where I had to do that at a very young age.
Yeah.
So it's not bad. It's all, these are all experiences that like shape you. But I think also in combination with upbringing and then also my experiences of my past relationships and past 2 engagements not working out, which again, all for the best, but I just don't have, I think I'm lacking a little, I don't want to say confidence because that sounds so skeptical, but I'm more realistic and not, it's harder for me to, I'm still a romantic at heart, but I'm not as much of a hopeless romantic as I used to be. I'm a little bit more realistic about the potentials of something not working out and what that could do to a family and how that could tear things apart. And even though a partner like that seems really wonderful and you think is going to have a really wonderful, long lasting relationship and marriage, and you're going to have a wonderful parents together, you could be 5 years into things and then it takes a turn. And the person that you married is maybe not the person that you're with 5 years from now, or maybe you guys fade apart, or maybe you fall out of love. Like there's so many things that could happen. And it scares me to like not be able to provide a stable, I'd want to make sure I could provide a stable, amazing foundation for my kids. And I don't want them to ever have to deal with worrying about those things. I just want them to be kids. You just never know. But that's life, right? You don't know. You can't predict.
I mean, those are scars. I mean, I hate to use that word, but those are scars. And that's when you're deciding, you meet somebody, and when you're deciding if you want to spend your life with them, all that shit should not play a role. That's trauma and scars. I hate to use the word trauma, it's too strong, but that's your baggage. That's why we go to therapy. Because we need to work this stuff out for ourselves, because all that baggage should not play a role in your current relationship. It shouldn't.
I agree to an extent, but I also think that you don't let it taint you, but let it help you make wiser decisions. So
learn from it, gain wisdom.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I don't think there's nothing wrong with being more realistic.
But that's a fine line.
I know,
it's a fine balance of gaining wisdom from it and also letting it affect your current decisions.
Yeah.
Yeah, but again, that's why.
I think that's
we go to therapy. Everybody go to friggin' therapy.
Well, I think
Judas Priest.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest fine line I find myself walking.
Because you have to be able to talk to somebody that you are not emotionally connected to and you don't have a history. That is the people. That's the person that you can be direct and honest with, and you can kind of get to the root of the problem.
And just want to call out too. I mean, therapy I think has become a lot more common in the last couple years. Mental health is prioritized and people are talking about more openly. But if you are in a relationship and you have not been to therapy, or maybe you have been, or you are going to, and you are trying to get your partner to, and they refuse to, just speaking from personal experience, if you're with someone that is hard-headed and refuses to go to therapy, that is a big fucking red flag. I just want to say that right now. Yes, because I was with someone who was so stubborn about going to therapy, and I had to basically drag him there. And then the entire time we sat in one session, we only got through one session, and it was actually a premarital because this was someone I was engaged to. And I was looking at it like, I just want to go to premarital to make sure we try everything possible to resolve any maybe conflicts we could potentially have before we actually commit to getting married. So I didn't actually go into it with like I'm trying to fix problems we have. I went into it with like the premarital, healthy, proactive approach.
Right.
And he didn't even like that. And he sat in the entire therapy session just like cross-armed, didn't want to contribute. So I just want to encourage, I don't think this is as common, but I do have a lot of friends that come from maybe families that aren't as open about it, or maybe their cultures and their backgrounds aren't as open about it. So
I mean, it can be a
tough.
cultural thing, but it's also a generational thing. I mean, I feel like I can only speak to American generations. But there's a more openness to that with a little bit with my generation, definitely more with your
For sure.
generation. But like with my dad's generation, it was looked at as a sign of weakness if you had to go talk to a therapist. But that all comes, and we've talked about this, that all comes from insecurity. There is some deep-seated insecurity about yourself, which is the point of going to therapy, to deal with that.
But it's not to fault
No,
anyone.
it's not a fault thing.
If it's your father and your father's father and your father's father, all these
Yes.
generations of men that are, and
Well, just
not
humans through
Right.
evolution.
Well, I even have a girlfriend that she's 100% Hispanic, born, like her entire family's Mexican, and she's shared with me that whether or not you're male or female, it doesn't matter. In the Mexican culture, from what she's told me, it's not really a supported practice or encouraged, because it's kind of like, you know what, you suck it up and you deal with life. That's the mentality.
Okay, I don't want to judge, but I'm gonna judge and say that's wrong.
Oh, and she agrees.
That's wrong.
She agrees.
I'm
She's shared with me that that's a thing.
Say that in a vacuum. Make that statement in a vacuum. Write that down on a white piece of paper and read that back to yourself and tell me if it makes sense. That makes no sense in any culture.
No.
Why do you have to get me fired up, Kristen?
So much fun. Well, I am really excited for next week's episode too, guys. I want to give you a little heads up that I have a somewhat of a, feels weird to say it, but somewhat of an anniversary that I will be reflecting on. An anniversary that would have been. And I found some documentation on my phone of it. It was basically a video journal diary entry that I took on this day that was going to be a day to represent something. And this anniversary is coming up next week. So I'm going to take advantage of that and somehow work that into. I'm still kind of figuring out what the flow of that's going to be.
No, but that can be cool because you're going to be able to show a little insight into a moment in time that was a while ago, but you'll also be able to talk about it in real time now and have reflections on it. So yeah, that's actually going to be really cool. I'm kind of excited to see how you put that together.
But thanks for tuning in this week, guys. Third time's me. I'm your host, Kris Zervis.
The hostess with the mostess.
And you can find the show on Instagram at Third Times Me, spelled out. Also on TikTok. My personal Instagram is at Kris Zervis, KrisZervas. And if you have not yet, please take a minute to leave me a review or rating if you guys are liking the show. Share it with your friends. I'm on all the platforms, Spotify, Apple Podcast, even on YouTube if you guys want to watch the video, Google Podcasts, all the things. Leave me a rating review if you guys like it. Share it with your friends and family. Appreciate you guys so much. See you next week.